welcome back. This is a special episode. I actually not recording episodes like this as much anymore. I've been actually going live straight into into spaces, like whether it's on Facebook and YouTube. So it's been a very much a kind of live experience, live by the seat of your pants almost. But I want to welcome you to someone who I've known for quite a while, and it's quite a special guest to me because we did our teacher training together. We did the GTP back in, well, sort of saying it through cringe teeth, like I was 29 at the time, just about to turn 30. You're quite a bit younger than me. So how old were you? Oh, sorry. So I introduce you. This is Matt Brooker, everybody.
Hi guys. Hi. Thanks for having me, Rich.
So this is Matt. We were part of the naughty group in uni when we used to
Yeah.
have our uni days, but we used to get the work done, but it was a lot of fun. And we've just reminisced a little bit about that journey towards teaching. And it did feel like now in hindsight, it feels like now that we were part of the end of the golden generation of teaching, particularly with that way or that route into teaching itself, that GTP learning it on the job, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. I think it was 2011. I think
Yeah,
2011, 2012.
it was.
I remember so my qualifying year it was the Olympic Games. So
That's right.
2012. Yeah, it was the London Olympics. We had the torch. I think all of us did because we were all in
Yeah, we
similar
did.
schools. So
Yeah, we
we all
did.
got the
Yeah.
torch, which was great. But yeah, it was 2012. Like you say, naughty days, but good fun days. And learning happened. It was on the job experience, and I think nothing nothing matches that. No experience I've had in an element of teaching would kind of make up for that. What the experiences that we had.
Yeah.
So
There
yeah,
was freedom. Do you know what? For me, there was a sense of freedom, and I didn't know it at the time. It's now looking back at from this starting point here. I look back at that whole year, and freedom to make mistakes. You were able to try things out, and if it went well, it was great. You were praised. If it went wrong, it was like, well, don't worry, you're learning along the way. I don't feel that teaching's followed that path anymore. I feel like that's not quite the road that we're on. And I know we're gonna get into it now. One of the reasons why I think we've spoken a few times over the last sort of 10 years just through Messenger and you pop up on my social media feed with some of the stuff you've done over the last 10 years, and I've looked on and gone, oh, that just sounds amazing. And you've got involved in different things over time, which I'm sure you've got reasons for, which we'll talk about. But one of the reasons why I was like, oh, Matt, I think we should do get together this time is because I signed up to do something called Head in the Game, which is something that's based around, it's all about men's mental health, but it's based around football. Most of the people know, like, I'm an absolute football nut, like, because I go on about it a lot. The reason why I remember 2012 was the year we graduated. It's not because my son Herbie was born. It was because West Ham played Blackpool in the playoff final at Wembley. And I went with my brother and my dad 2 weeks before Herbie was due, with my mum going, you can't go there because what happens if Kate goes into labour? And I was like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'll get back from London, knowing that would never be the case. And also the London Olympics. And then Herbie was born pretty much on due date. So it was a big year. I say graduated, became a qualified teacher, and all that stuff happened. Why Head in the Game for me? Look, football's always been a part of my life, and I reminisce back now. My body can't hack it anymore. Like, so if I play football, I'm out for 3 days, just injured and can't move. But it was more that it's more than the football. It was the social side. And then when I got to a point where I couldn't do it anymore, there was nothing else that really replaced it. I didn't get the same feeling from anything. And I saw that you'd been a big part of Head in the Game, which is a charity. Do you want to give us a little bit of an overview about what it's about and
yeah,
who it
sure.
reaches?
So I'll give you an insight into the charity and the sort of how I kind of got involved. That's
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So we're a charity organisation that's based across Kent, London, and we've also had sessions up in Sheffield as well. Um, Basically, the whole premise is that we use football as a catalyst for conversation for men.
Mm.
And now women. So we actually run Head in the Game sessions for just women and for just men, which is like it's been amazing. And the coaches we've got, Lisa and Gemma, are phenomenal, like absolutely wonderful coaches. As part of the sort of division for the women's section. But yeah, we use football as a catalyst for conversation, and we discuss things that might be happening in everyday lives. There's people from all walks of life. So, you kind of, football is a working class sport, but everyone has problems, everyone has issues, and football's kind of like a level playing field. You get out there, you play, and it kind of opens up that conversation for people to sort of have. So we run 12 weekly programs, which you're luckily you're taking part in, which is fantastic. So it's a 12-week program whereby we start off with nice simple routines, with thinking about why we're there, the purpose for these sessions. For us, it's about developing a sense of well-being, and a better mental health for every individual that comes in. So we build up week on week, and we offer tools and support for our not clients, our friends who come in and work with us. And we do things not just football. So we look at, I don't want to spoil it for you because
I'm gonna discover,
program. But it's a range of activities, not just football. Football's a great thing, but we offer different activities that will support your mental health and well-being along the way in the 12 weeks. And it doesn't stop there at the 12 weeks. So you get a 6-week aftercare program whereby if you need anything, we're there. We offer that support. We signpost for different reasons. So we've had individuals that might need some support in other areas, so we signpost them towards that area, for example. So if it's financial difficulties, we'll kind of signpost them towards that. If it's further support with mental health and well-being, we'll signpost them towards certain areas. We're really lucky. Mark, who's CEO of the charity, he very overqualified with everything he does in terms of the mental health and well-being. But he kind of prides himself on making sure that we have that aftercare with all of our participants as well, because what we don't want to do is do 12 weeks and see you later, it's all gone. So for me, that's where I did a 12-week program. It's literally just out the back of lockdown. So I think we were released, I don't know the March, and then I kind of, or April, or fully done, I think.
We had a weird one, didn't we? It was like March.
I think we kind of went out and came back in, didn't we?
Yeah, the June, March. We had weird lockdowns, didn't we?
I think we
feels like a million years ago now.
Might have been out just before Christmas or something like that. And I was really lucky that I was able to be a participant in one of the 12-week sessions up in Medway. And for lots of varying different reasons, we'll probably get onto that a bit later on. But it really helped me sort of come out my shell, which is weird because you guys know me quite well. And as a teacher, extrovert, and that's fine. But actually, as an individual, I'm not. I don't really like that sort of thing. So it helped me develop a lot more sort of social skills. Made me understand why I was behaving the way I was, because I didn't realise how much of an effect it was really having on the people around me. During the 12 weeks, I kind of realised that my actions have so many more consequences than I actually realise that they do have. So it kind of taught me all those skills. I mean, I'm still learning them, but it's kind of helped me. And then after those 12 weeks, I said to the guys, "Look, I love this. I'm desperate to just sort of be around to support." So I became like an online ambassador and kind of helped the guys promote what we're doing, because actually, who better than someone who's actually done the program, and an opportunity to come up, because I'm a qualified coach to quite a high level football. So for me, it made sense to try and help out with the coaching as well. So I ended up coming in and supporting with the coaching element of the program, and eventually delivering. So I think I'm on my 3rd or 4th cycle now of delivering the program, which is from where I was, I think it was 2020, 2021, something like that. When I was there to where I am now, it's so much better. And the program has a lot to thank, really, and like I say, it's not from an education background. I've only ever met a couple of teachers that have done this program. It's people from all walks of life, and that's been really valuable for me, because I've learned that everyone has those difficulties. Being in the pressure cooker of being a teacher, you always go, it's mad. Especially now at the moment, I worked out, I've got 11 days till SATs. Woo! So you can see your eyes rolling, but you can kind of for me, I'm like, I've got that coming on, or that coming in. But I'm learning how to sort of kind of switch off, tune off. Doing things like this tonight is fantastic, because it means, I'm giving back to myself. So I'm kind of drifting away from that. And the program helped helps me to sort of support others in that way.
Is that boundaries, Matt?
Mm,
Because so the week, so I started last week, first session last week, and I hate to
yeah.
say it, I actually missed yesterday's session because of work, which
Mm.
I'm gutted about, and mainly because look, the footballs. If there's a football somewhere and I'm allowed to go, I will go. But
Yeah.
what I experienced on the first week wasn't quite what I expected. And other people, I think maybe you said it to me, but or maybe it was the guy who phoned me up who was running the session. He was like, it won't be quite what you're expecting.
Yeah.
And the session started with just a really honest conversation. Mark was there. I think he says he tries to make an effort to attend the first
Yeah.
session at a new place or for every new session. And then we had two coaches, and it was that look, we're gonna stand around and it's about developing the skills to have conversations and just share why you're here. And
Yeah.
it kind of started off with go as deep as you want, or just share as if you're just here to play football, you just want to have and it's not even really the truth yet, but you don't want to share,
Yeah.
that's fine. Oh my
Yeah.
God, everybody opened up, and it
Yeah.
was like a real, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not there. Well, afterwards, I felt like a bit of a fraud, and I think it was quite humbling when people
Mm.
share that where they're truly at and where they've been in a quite recent times in terms of mental health. Because I was a bit like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, look, and the stat is like, it is the men's mental health is the biggest killer,
Yeah.
like
Between the
that
ages of 21 and 49 is the
which
biggest killer in men.
I've lost friends like that way, so
Mm.
I know it, but there's almost like don't know, enough of a distance for it not to be felt. I think it's an emotion that you see it, you hear it, but actually feeling it. And I don't know, maybe it's a turning away because it's too hard to really acknowledge.
Yeah.
But to stand in a group of about 20 blokes and then share where they've at and why they're there, I was a bit like, oh my gosh, like it really hit me quite hard, because I've done another podcast similar to this where we spoke about men's mental health with someone who's a champion of it in Manchester. His name's Kevin Wren, really knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And I know you'll be the
Yeah.
same. But I was like, whoa. And like, that's why I wanted to go back, because
Yeah.
I was like, I want to be part of having those conversations, because I think
Mm.
that is really important. Again, because I think there is something to give there, as well as go and enjoy the football, have
Yeah.
and what exercise brings, which is endorphins and making you
Mhm.
feel better. The fact you're part of a community and a
Yeah.
group of people is really big.
Yeah.
What drove you towards it?
So for me, I had so just before lockdown, and I moved and I changed into a different school setting. I had, for want of a better way of putting it, a breakdown, and it was quite a significant one. Not in the classroom with the kids. It was in the classroom, but not with the kids. It was at the end of the day. I'd had let's say, a traumatic event at the school I was working in, and it triggered a lot of memories that I had from childhood, which actually were unresolved. Um, and it spiraled me out, and I left the job immediately, effective immediately. I didn't have a job to go to. I walked out. I came home. Um, I said to my wife, I'm not going back. I'm done. And it was, that was a hard conversation to have, but she understood. She got it. Um, and luckily I managed to find another setting. But I still had all these unresolved issues that I felt I never really had anyone to talk to. I kept finding that every step of my career was kind of almost self-sabotaging myself. Like, I could do that job with my eyes closed, but I'm not going to do it. Or that person of authority, I'd make up an excuse to not like them so that I didn't have to work alongside them in a team. And I just felt like I needed something to help me because, I couldn't keep doing what I was doing at that time. With young children on the way and a family that we were beginning to grow, I need to be a better person. And out of the blue, this advert popped up. I mean, I'm sure smartphones listen to you, right? It just popped up, and I thought that sounds like good fun. So I sort of got in contact with the guys, and I said, I struggle with social situations. not very good with people. This is what I've had. And they said, fine, just come, stand. Don't even need to talk. And I was like, okay, right, that's fine. So yeah, just jump straight in. Well, I drove there, I left, and then I drove back, and then I sat in the car, and then someone knocked on the window, said, "Hi, are you here for this?" And I was like, "No." um, and then they said, "Are you sure?" I said, "No." I said, "Do you want to come down? Don't have to talk." And it was Mark actually, and it was like, "Just come down, see what you want to do, have a chat." And I was like, okay, fine. And then instantly it was like, okay, that's fine. Someone's come to me, and then yeah, it was for me. When I look back as to the why, because obviously as an educational expert, we have to look at the why. We kind of like the reason was I couldn't continue the way I was because, like I've seen so many friends that have gone the wrong way, who we can't get back now, and it's that idea that actually I don't want to be a statistic. Um, in the same way that the children I teach are not statistics, I don't ever want to become a statistic. That's not me. I'm an individual, and actually, everyone everyone has something to give, and I just didn't realize what that was until I came to those sessions and realized that oh, I haven't. That's my purpose. That's what I need to do. I need to continue with that. Um, it's been a great support network for me, and it continues to do so. So even as a coach, um, not a full-time coach because we do the 12 weeks and then we have a couple of weeks break because obviously it's quite hard going on us because we take in quite a lot.
Mm.
You got like we have 20 odd guys come, and like I said, it's very humbling. You
Load,
hear
yeah, they
their
offload on
stories
you. Yeah.
and you then go, whew,
Indeed.
and then you kind of almost you decompress, but it's great because the support network we have as a coach is phenomenal. Everyone's there for each other. This week I found out that I'm not really supposed to be playing football anymore, which
No.
is bad. But you kind of you've reached out to me. I've reached out to them straight away, which I wouldn't have had I not been in this program. My mates would have gone, softy, come on, crack on, just get on with it. But these guys are kind of like, this is the story, and they're all offering these kind of anecdotes and support, and you can either choose to listen to it or you can't, like, but it helps. I
Mm.
might not wanted to hear it at the time, but actually, when you read through the messages and you hear the voice notes, and they're always my favorite. I love voice notes; it's so much easier.
Yeah.
Get a voice note, and
Agreed.
there's merit in voice notes. But it's fantastic. The support network they offer and continue to offer is second to none for me. So why? Because it's a constant source of support. If I want it, if I reach out, I get it. If I don't, then I don't get it back. It's not a problem. There's no I have to do this, they have to do that. It's if I want to, then I can, and that's the joy of it for me, which I like.
Yeah, that sounds like, well, what a great answer, because one, you're just shining a light on the supportive community that you've got there, which we're talking about we're talking about mental health in general, but
Yeah.
we're shining a light on men's mental health because we know it's such a big a
Mm.
big I suppose we just called it a problem because that's what it is, right? And does it start in your experience now,
Mm.
does it start to get better by having opportunities to talk and share? Is that the way forward for most? Because there'll be a lot of men who will go, it's just not. If I said to my dad's 67, right,
Yeah.
it's about to turn 68. If I said to him, just go and talk about it, he just
Mm.
wouldn't. Like, so there's maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know with him. Maybe not. Maybe it's just that they need to be convinced and see it and
Mm.
feel it. There was a big range of ages, I would
Yeah.
say, as well. Again, incorporating that. I mean, maybe the older guy wasn't quite as old as my dad, but I bet he was quite close.
Yeah. So we have guys. I mean, I think the cutoff point. I think for a number of reasons. I think it's 65 or
Okay.
55, 55 or 65. But you're right. Like my dad is, I'd say, hang on, 67, 68,
Right.
69 now. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
he's of that generation. And he only ever started opening up um, when I started delivering these sessions.
Right.
He sort of said to me, "So what do you do?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, we start off by doing this, and we introduced I won't spoil it for you now, but we introduced something. I introduced something with him that you guys will all see
Oh,
later on, in I think week 3 or 4 or 5. But it was just something that I sort of just one little tool, one little strategy, and I just said to him, this, and he was like, "Oh wow, like that's phenomenal." And I text him every so often, and I go, "How you feeling?" Like, but not how you feeling, because that's a very open, interpretive question. Because actually, guys don't want to answer that. No one wants to answer it. Not just guys. No one really wants to answer
geez.
that.
Stock
Or
answer.
if you say how you doing, my stock
Right.
answer at work is buzzing, right? Buzzing, not a problem, fine. You know, and they know that he's all right.
Yeah.
Um, but you kind of that question is how you doing, how you feeling. No one really wants to answer that, do they? It's not a question that you kind of. It's very emotive, and if you want to answer, you do. If you don't, you're still going to say the same thing. Yeah,
Do
okay.
you think as well, like it comes with no real meaning behind it often? But
There's
how are you
there's there's
feeling? Yeah, I'm okay. Right, good.
yeah
And even if you said, no, I'm rubbish, I'd be like, okay, right.
yeah,
Well, no
there's
one wants to
that.
follow that up.
There's the question of sincerity, and quite often, like, how are you? Is it a sincere? How are you? You
Yeah.
know, reframing the questions that you ask. You know, maintain not maintaining eye contact, but sitting alongside someone is
Mm.
powerful. That I think it's the Norwich City advert.
Yeah. Oh,
Sit
my God,
alongside
that gets you,
someone,
doesn't it?
and you never realise, but it's that a genuine conversation.
Mm.
You know, we can sit here and we speak every so often, but if I was to want to have that honest conversation, I think I probably could. I've allowed myself the opportunity to be able to do that, um, because of this program. But I feel like there's always going to be a stigma attached
Yeah.
to mental health. People never truly want to show that sign of weakness. Depending on your job, your career, what you do for a living. I think Stephen Bartlett, who I love listening to him, I could listen to him all day. But if we have people like him who promote well-being, and I'm not going to say mental health, I'm going to say well-being.
Mm.
If they promote that positive well-being, if people like him continue to do it, then I feel like as a society, there's more of an opportunity, for others, as long as it's done in a sincere nature.
No,
It's sincerity.
I'll piggyback on the top of that because that's something which is the word you used the word reframing and then which was said last week like it's also like mental health the word just has a stigma to it, so it was reframed into mental fitness because it can
Yeah,
go up and down, like it's something you have to
yeah,
work on, it's something you can build upon, all I suppose the buzzwords and the keywords around it. And then I was listening to Stephen Bartlett recently, and he was talking again about well-being, but and he was talking about again the word community and opportunity. So
yeah,
how important, again, I think of because it's easy for me, I'm thinking of my dad and I'm like, well, yeah, you probably wouldn't go and openly share like in a circle like we did
yeah,
on last Tuesday, but he goes to play walking football
yeah,
where there is an outlet of one energy, but also they all talk. They go back to the social club after, and my dad doesn't stay that long, but he'll have a quick drink, and
yeah,
they'll just have a bit of an offload. And even if it is at that point just about football or whatever, they'll talk about the people who aren't there, and then someone will check in and send a text, and
yeah,
that kind of thing happens. So you end up having like this community and connection. And
mm,
I was a nurture group teacher in my last like year or
mm,
so. The word belonging and
mm,
feeling that this is my space,
yeah,
this is where I feel comfortable, this is where I can have the courage to open up because it's safe,
mm.
like it's really important. So how do we promote that for people to find that community or find that channel?
I think it's finding a common interest or common ground is key. So, like my dad, they're both my dad, your dad, same
Yeah,
ages. I've been trying to get him into walking football, but you know,
my
he's like,
dad's
"Oh, my date's
obsessed,
done.
mate.
Never
My
going to
dad's
do
obsessed.
it." And he,
Obsessed.
he used to play to really high standards. I'm like,
Really.
"Oh, give it a go. Have a go. You were better than me. Like, go and try." But he was I suppose he struggles with social situations, and you and I both know what that means when we talk about struggling with social situations, and how he is in large group environments. So
Mm.
for me, I had to try and help him find something that was of an interest for him. He'd never picked up golf clubs before, never. Me and my brother run an Instagram page, and we do so much together with the golf. And it's very successful. We get lots of sponsorship, which is nice, but
No way. I've seen it. I've
it's
watched a lot of your videos on there. Yeah, it's good.
it's
It's
pretty
good.
good. We blew up during lockdown, which was fun. We did a lot of Sky Sports stuff. But we said to my brother, like, he needs someone to talk to. He's not going to talk to us.
Mm.
We're not his, we're not his people. So we signed him up to down the road, the local club, the golf club, as a member. Um, and all of a sudden he's like this social butterfly. He's got all of these people that
Oh,
he's like, oh,
yeah.
that's the best. So I'll go down with him, and I live a little bit further away, not massively, but a little bit further away. And I'll go down, and he'll go, this is my son, this is this one, this is this one, this is the one that does all this mental stuff. It's like, it's just, yeah, it's a bit more than that, Dad, but that's fine. It's the teacher. This one, he does this, and he
Mm.
could talk to him. He'll tell you he'll solve your problems. Not he's not quite dad, but it's but it's
Chat to him.
you
Yeah,
know
come on, he'll sort you out.
it's like, I'm not a counsel dad. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
But he says to me, like, he's like, oh, I spoke to whatever. I'll remain nameless, Michael. And he was having a problem because his son's going through this, and I didn't know what to say to him. I said, well, don't.
Mm.
What did you do? Like, listen. I
Mm.
said, because what he doesn't want your advice. What he wants is he wants that opportunity to talk. He wants someone that's going to listen to him. And again, it's that their sincere nature. You know, it's very hard to tell someone how to be sincere.
Mm.
You just kind of have to do it. It's that learn to listen to someone and to actually acknowledge what they're saying. And this is key: is acknowledgement of what somebody is saying. Don't just go, uh-huh. Don't try and build your conversation on top of their conversation, because it's their opportunity as an outlet. And he's very lucky that now he's got that community where he can go in and, like, like watching Last of the Summer Wine when I go down there sometimes. And he's like,
You know,
he's just sat on the wall, and you're like, oh,
I'm going to
but it's good for
tentatively
them.
suggest that I
Yeah,
probably am now into middle age. I know you're a bit younger than me. And
close,
do you know,
close.
close, yeah. What I worry about, I mean, you've got young children. I've got,
Mm,
my youngest is a son, and he's, about to turn 12. And
mm,
I look at, and even I played football till I was quite old,
mm,
probably way too old. Couldn't do it anymore, but I was still trying. But I was
mm.
playing football with sort of lads who were 19, 20,
Yeah,
21. And this is going to sound really horrible, and I hope none of them ever watch this, but they weren't at a standard to play. They'd not had a lot of coaching in their early years, and they loved football, don't get me wrong.
mm,
But yeah, and this is mirrored not just in football, but in other kind of sports and
mm.
clubs, is that the numbers are dwindling. Right, there's not enough coming in
Yeah,
from that age group to go, right, let's have
mm,
5 divisions, 6 divisions, so that there's somewhere where everybody can go and land. And then we
yeah,
ended up being, I don't know, just not a very good side, playing with teams who were quite a lot better than us, but we didn't have anybody coming through. And I look at that little age group, and I think that they were, in terms of like the social side and having friends and having like a community of people, or a channel to take this to. And I'm not saying it was amazing all the time for your well-being, because it wasn't.
yeah,
There were times when you're like, I need to get out of here. Um, but there was an outlet, there was a channel there. And it feels
yeah,
like that's become less and less over the last 20, 25 years. And I don't,
yeah,
the stats must show, I know that in our area, that's particularly true in
yeah.
all of those sports,
Mm,
whether it's squash, tennis,
mm,
badminton,
mm.
obviously football, cricket, there's just not as many people taking up that pathway. They just don't want to. And I look at like even younger, and I think, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm forcing him to go swimming and play football. He does enjoy it, but
Mm.
will his habits around screen time, gaming, other interest, or the new thing, whatever the new thing will end up being in the next 5 years, sort of take him away from that and being very insular. We're very much spend time on our own now, don't we? It seems to be like a habitual thing. So is it something that's going to get worse? Is it something that even though we can come and talk about it and shine a light on it, and even like bigger champions than us, like Stephen Bartlett, is it something that's just out of our control?
Societal changes have meant that younger generations are coming through very different. I'm, you as well. I'm very fortunate that I get to see these generations come through. I'm probably on the second, third cycle of generation now coming through, and you see the patterns, you see the trends. It's like, oh, you guys going to the park tonight? No. You just said you're meeting up. Oh yeah, we're meeting up online. And for me, it's like I've got to get my brain out of the old man attitude of that's not meeting up, and I've got to kind of think to myself, well, that's how this generation are choosing to do it. I may not like the medium that they're using, but for me, as long as these individual children have a community they can belong to, that's in a safe environment, of course. Have to mention, has to be in that safe environment that parental control is and parental responsibility is all there, and that they're all aware of what's happening. But if they have a community that they can still belong to, even though it's not the way that I used to. I mean, I remember you'd ride your little rally, and you'd ride 3 miles down the road, on the road, no helmet. You'd knock at your mate's door, hoping they're home, and they weren't. And you'd got to ride 3 miles back, only to get a phone call with no voicemail, because we didn't have those. The old and you'd kind of have your phone call. Oh, I've just come back from my nan's. Do you want to come over? Oh, yeah, all right. You toddle back 3 miles back down the road again.
Not the nostalgia is hitting right now.
But that's communities we had, so that was very different. But now I think, I mean, I worry my 2 or 3 and 7, and they haven't asked for iPads, they haven't asked for iPhones, they haven't asked for games consoles. So I'm in a very fortunate position. Their friends have, their cousins have, they all have them, but the girls don't want it. They'd much rather go walk around the woods and go and make new friends. They couldn't care less. They're going, hi, how are you? Probably a bit too much so sometimes, but you kind of I think that's probably just the way that we are as a family. I think, like yourselves, we're always out. We're always out enjoying life outside, doing those things. But the main worry I have is not that they're not communicating. For me, it's the medium they're doing it through. How's that going to change? Is that going to limit the conversation they have? Is that going to hinder the conversations? Because they're having a conversation whilst playing a game. Are they really listening to the conversation, or are they playing the game? There isn't that chance to just.
I suppose the focus. But do you know what? It's interesting. First of all, I'm going to say thank you. You very politely called me an old man during that. I like that, Matt. Get your old man mindset away. Yeah, I totally agree. And
put myself in that category.
Just an aside, that's a really good point. That my idea of a community and belonging is actually getting up and going somewhere and being part of that group. And that's different. And I actually do see that, not just with my own son, but when I chat to these, 9, 10, 11-year-olds who come through the tuition, and I tutor inside a school, so I chat to lots of different year groups, that they do meet up and they do talk. I wonder if it does matter whether they're playing a game or not. And whether even what are they talking about? Like, probably 90% of it's going to be about the game, but there might be an outlet in there that does help them talk about whether it's their school day or people are, I say our age, our generation still meet online and perhaps talk about other things. I can say now that during COVID, actually playing online, gaming online with some of my friends was an absolute energy saver, mood saver, and I had a really fun experience of doing it. We don't do it now, we just meet up in real life, which seems boring now, really. I like playing online, but it could provide the outlet. And I'd wonder if it does matter whether it's not. Would it be different at football? If I played football, 90% would be football chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, same, probably same for my dad. On your dad at golf, probably most of
Yeah.
it's going to be about, you know, how many balls did you lose today, or you know that.
Yeah. But as long as there's that 5 to 10% opportunity
Yeah,
for a conversation,
yeah, that's
then it's
interesting.
there.
That's a really good reframe for me, because that is something that I do worry about. And I look at, do you know what I was saying about my son? But actually my youngest daughter, she's the one that probably spends more time than any of the other of us actually looking at a screen and you know, playing with friends online. You know, that is what she does predominantly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do worry that she doesn't have an outlet, but actually perhaps that is it.
Mm.
And she's happy
And
enough. Like, I'm not worried in other ways, but
that's the thing. It's that, have the open, honest, frank conversations with kids. With your children. With children you're in care of when you're working with them and tutoring them. It's that, it's having an outlet, and that's key. There's an outlet there, and if it is a 1 to 10% opportunity, it's still better than none.
so
It's that.
there's a there, there's like a pathway here, and I think this is where we've got it wrong somewhere. I say we, I mean society as a whole has gone wrong somewhere. Is that we are bringing up a group, a couple of generations who doesn't have an outlet. They don't have, or they don't feel that there's anywhere where they can go, or they're not getting the support that they need at the right time, particularly at crisis point. So
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in early intervention. So yeah, 100%, there needs to be things in place. But even at crisis point, when people are really hitting that stage where they need someone to come and intervene because they can't trust themselves, or, you know, they're digging themselves into a deep emotional hole, something's gone wrong at pretty much, I feel like, at every single stage.
Yeah.
And that's even before we bring like where we've come from in terms of the education, which is obviously where a lot of my audience comes from. You know, we're a lot of, you know, support tutors and teachers to grow their business, to give them a chance to either move away, or, you know, if they've already made that decision, which is how I prefer it to be, if I'm honest, they've already made that decision to kind of move away from school. I don't want to take good teachers away from education. That's not part of the reason of what I do, why I do it. So we're society in a whole, and we're talking about general well-being, and we're going to shine the light back on education in a second. But in
Yeah.
general, in all industries, not just education, but you
Yeah.
look at the corporate world, I look at public services as a
Mm.
whole. Are we doing enough? Like, like, for example, there will be people that say, yeah, you know, we've got these well-being kits, we got doing, yeah, we have mugs that we fill up with chocolate once a week, and we do,
Yeah.
you know, and even, and in, I think corporate world are taking big strides, because we've got corporations going, let's do a 4-day week.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
let's look at unlimited holiday. Let's look at, you know, flexible working hours for families,
Yeah.
but I suppose in a way corporations can do that. There's an
Yeah.
element that they know that they can do that, and if people feel valued, they're going to give more back in. Public services almost have hands tied behind their back often. So if we look at education, it's going to stay Monday to Friday. If you look at hospitals, you can't go 4 days a week at hospital. You can't go unlimited holidays. You know, it's just not. So there's always one hand tied behind the back, I always feel, with public services. What else could we be doing?
So yeah, it's ultimately for me, it's gift of time.
Time.
Time. Time for me is the biggest catalyst for why people do what they do and how they behave. Being a more experienced member of the education sector, and I've seen governments come through, I've seen change of policies come through, I've worked with multiple academy trusts, some really good, some not. Some are not around anymore, for reasons of not getting it right. For me, the number one is time. If you're not going to give time to talk, if you're not going to give time to decompress, if you're not going to give time to get the work done, if you're, we all know the retention and improvement crisis that's going on in the education sector, it's appalling. I think it's just like 20% or something of, new teachers and initial teacher training is below national average, for the first time in however many years.
Mm.
The dropout rate of ECT ones and ECT twos is I mean, horrific. And you speak to all of them, and what's the one thing they want? Time. They haven't got the time to do this, they haven't got the time to do that. You need radical leadership, which corporate world has. Right?
Mm.
I'm a massive advocate, and speaking out of turn, don't care. My own personal values and opinions, not those of my academic trust that I work with, but my own personal opinions are corporations have it sussed. They are making strides. They are leap years above what we're doing. They're offering 4-day weeks. They're offering those times, and although we sit there and go, "Oh, would that work?" Why not?
Mm.
If you offer that opportunity, the recruitment process might become easier. We may get more teachers through the door if you offer them 4 days a week. You might get more people coming into the profession. The time to actually get the work done. I mean, I've got a stack of marking to do tonight. It's not happening. It's
That
not
with me
happening.
instead. Yeah.
It will happen organically tomorrow. But you
Yeah.
sort of look at it and you go, I'm experienced enough to say I'm going to give myself the time because unfortunately, not the trust that I work for, but it's the situation that the education sector is in. It's not my school's fault. It's
It's the
policies that are in
system.
place to
It's the
fund them.
system.
It's the system.
So,
I can't blame. I could go to any trust, any school, and it's still the same. If
yeah.
anything, I get given the time and the opportunity to organize my time in my way that I see fit. Yes, I'm experienced at doing that, so some of the young ones might not, but why don't we give them the chance?
It's
They don't.
interesting. It's interesting, Matt, because what you're saying about is quite radical. It would be super radical in the educational sector.
Mm,
So time, I mean, look, you could go to different topics around time. So when we talk about time for teachers, are you
yeah,
talking about like time for marking, time for
yeah,
assessment, time for planning, like
yeah,
so basically PPA, but more of it?
yeah.
Are you talking about more time for training? Or are you talking about just like, actually, let's just reduce the working week? And have
Mm.
you, like, because it's a really good idea, but have you thought about how it would look and how it would work in the school?
Yeah, so I mean, when you're looking at this is the sticky wicket, isn't it? Like, I don't think anyone's going to nail this right because we haven't yet, um, yet. But for me, I would look at it and say, do we offer, less working days? Probably not, because you still wouldn't get the work done. If anything, you procrastinate on the days that you're off to try and get the work in. So, would the 4-day work week? For me personally, not. I'd need 5 days. I'd need it just to make sure I get, as a perfectionist, to get the job done that I want. So I would looking at the needs of your staff, individual staff, and I think this is where schools get it wrong, and they get it wrong quite a lot. Um, they need to look at the staff that they have. What are their queries about the time? Is it that they're not getting marking done? Okay, so your marking policy needs to change. Is it that they're not getting assessment right? Okay, so look at your assessment policy. Is it that your PPA isn't long enough? Okay, so what are you asking teachers to do in that PPA? And I know people are going to be critical and say, "Oh, it's not directed time." Well, I understand that, but it is. Uh,
Yeah,
it is.
let's put the reality check into that. Yeah, of
It
course it
is
is. Yeah,
because what are you doing? You're
yeah.
planning and preparing and assessing for those children that you're in care of for the rest of the week. You're being directed what to do. You may not be directed how to do it, but you're being directed what to do. And ultimately,
That was never my experience though, Matt. I mean, look, I was in a
hmm,
school in the beginning that gave a lot of freedom around that, but I was
yeah,
always with a senior leader just because of where I was teaching, year two and
hmm,
year six. There was always
yeah,
a senior,
yeah,
member in there. And then when I went to a school where I was the senior leader,
hmm,
and they chucked another senior in there because they were like, because they didn't know me. I hadn't got the
hmm,
stock there yet. They were still trying to see whether it was okay. And I felt very much directed because we didn't have the freedom to do what we wanted at all. So I think you're right about saying it's not, it's the reality is it's still directed time.
hmm.
Has to be.
Ultimately, yes. It's accountability, isn't it? At the end of the day, you're in due care of young minds, and you want to make sure they succeed in every way they can.
So the gov. So let's
Yeah,
let's put the government spin
yeah,
on this, right? Government think it's money.
Yep.
And I suppose in a way, if you're going to go 4-day working week, it would be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they actually, they're not going to do that. It's going to be Monday to Friday, unless you get an academy that go really radical and they're going to try something brand new and they're going to, break every system down to nothing and rebuild it all to make it fit what it needs to happen. Right? Go on. You're going to tell me someone exists. Come on, tell me.
There is. There is one academy, one set of schools down in Ashford. They're an alternative provision, and this is where I looked at their job adverts. I thought, wow, you've nailed this. And I do know he was head. I think he's now executive head now. I do know him, and I've worked for him before. He was an advocate for mental health and mental health within the education sector, and he's trialing 4-day working weeks, but being paid a full-time salary.
Okay.
And I'm hopefully trying to catch up with him before the end of this year to say, how's it going? But there's been no more job adverts since that's gone out. So for me, if there's no more job adverts, something's working.
Absolutely.
Because he's able to retain those members of staff. There's length in that conversation to have at another date, but there are people trialing. I don't know how the funding works, because obviously government are not going to fund this. We can't. We can't. As a country, taxes would be increased.
Yeah, sure. There'd be consequences somewhere. Yeah.
There's going to be a massive line of inquiry there, and actually, it might not work in that way.
I feel like I want to, at this point, just sort of give you the platform. So you're talking from a platform that this is a subject quite a lot about, and you've actually been a part of a project that released a book, right? So let's talk about that, because I think that it'll be really easy for people to kind of go and listen and go, okay, let's listen to Matt, and you might come across as someone who's been in teaching for a long time. You're an expert as a teacher, but actually this goes deeper than that. Like, obviously, your work with Head in the Game and where you've been doing that for the last 3 years, and big advocate for mental well-being and that mental fitness that we was talking about. But from a well-being in school perspective, also you've got quite a lot of skin in the game. So the book was called The Big Book of Whole School Wellbeing. Tell us a little bit about that.
So there was 4 main authors that put together, I think it was just at the beginning of lockdown. Twitter blew up during lockdown. X blew up significantly. It was Twitter. Blew up significantly with a big collective, the Edwell Collective, which is the Education Wellbeing Collective. So many inspirational individuals. Really close personal friend, Kimberly Evans, that was one of the main 4 authors. And I developed a few different programs, a few little support networks that I could talk about later. But they created a platform, this Edwell Collective, this platform of teachers sharing their experiences. And I'm not saying, oh my God, this happened in school. You have to have that element of autonomy when you're delivering. Sorry, my little girl's saying goodnight. I apologise.
Okay.
The life she's going to bed really late. So we put together, the Edwell Collective came together and opened up a platform through social media, which, we spoke earlier about social media being, possibly a catalyst for bad, but actually it was great. All these individuals came together, they made their stories. And what they did is they then pulled in all these individuals that was kind of like adding in little sound bites and adding little anecdotes of what's happening and what they're doing in their schools and how they're developing and how they're doing this. A gentleman by the name of Patrick, he's a wellbeing superhero is what he calls himself, and actually, he is. They started what you call Teacher 5 a Day, and it was a massive hashtag that was coming up on Twitter, and then everyone started following on board, and then it opened up this platform for, I think, roughly about between 30 and 40 educational professionals. I'm not going to say experts, because we are in what we do. in a certain way, but some people might not believe that. But open up that platform for all of us to. We had it was one of the largest Zoom meetings I've been in where everyone could speak. And we got together and we were talking about different experiences we had, and we did 2 or 3 of these meetings. And then the 4 lead individuals, Kimberly being one of them, sort of reached out to everyone, emailed everyone, said, look, we're creating this book that we want to put into schools when all this storm goes away. We want to put it in every school in the country and want to make sure that people are being advocates. And it's a great book because it's one of those where you don't have to read it cover to cover. You can pick it up, like most education books now, you can pick it up and you can flick through and go, I need some help on this, or I need something like that, or do you know what? I need to hear what someone else's experience was. So from my personal perspective, it was my background was obviously with men's mental health, how I went through that traumatic event in the school that I was in. Basically, I was accosted by a parent in front of about 200 others, physically maneuvered, should we say,
Wow.
by a parent, and it triggered a lot of historic memories and all those sort of things, and I wrote about that in the book. And our executive head, who I've known for years, we've known each other for about 12, 13 years. We've holidayed in Florida together before I worked for him. Just going to put that in there now. Before, it wasn't on school's budget, but we went away to Florida together. We've been away on families trips because our families are quite close. And he didn't know any of that. He knew that I was leaving, and he knew that I was leaving immediately, and he offered me the olive branch of bringing me into his school. But he never realized quite what had happened. And then when he read the story that I told in the book, it was a great opportunity to then have that conversation. He said, I never realized. I said, well, when I behave in certain ways, it's unresolved issue.
Yeah.
So for me, it was great to be able to have that platform to express how I felt. And actually, it's okay to feel like that at times. I mean, how dare someone pick me up on the playground and do that to me just because the big, I mean, I'm 4'1", so I'm hardly the biggest person
Right.
in the building.
Mate, you've added a few inches there. On tiptoes.
On my tiptoes, with 6-inch heels.
Yeah.
It was, and I discussed the fact of how, and people will probably go, oh, you can't say this, but I felt emasculated. For me, that's how I felt. And I felt like things were taken away from me. And I wanted to tell that story and say that I'm not the only one this does happen to.
Yeah.
And lots of these bits of work, lots of these chapters, tell either an anecdote or give you solutions to certain things that you do in the classroom. The well-being of finance in schools is huge. People don't realize the stress, the strains of financial difficulties in the school and how the finance teams have to deal with things, or the front of house teams, I don't want to say receptionists, but the ladies and gents on the front
office
of
people,
house.
Yeah.
The IT teams, it wasn't just teachers' perspectives, it was education as a whole. We had CEOs writing in the book. It was, everybody had a say. And it was one of those where you go, wow, and I've read it front to back because not because I'm in it, because it's nice to see, but reading through it and you go, wow, I never realized that what someone did there would impact that person. And actually that was key. It's like, I've always maintained you treat the cleaners the same way you treat your executive head. There is no hierarchy in my eyes. It's everybody's a human being. No one can tell me off. No, I might do something that you disapprove of, but I'm not a child. Don't chastise me. But I wouldn't chastise a child. I'd have a conversation with them about what I felt at that time and how that made me feel. I think there's merit and length in that conversation about how we treat everybody else within the setting that we're in. And that book kind of pieced that together really well, gave you snippets of support, told you anecdotes of what to do and what not to do. And then it sort of bridged everyone together that the education system is one. And actually, it's not anti-government. Shouldn't say that because nothing ever is, but it's that we're not working against each other here. And that's something I constantly remind myself. when I'm battling with senior leaders, because I made the active choice not to do that anymore. And I constantly think to myself, well, how are they feeling
You.
as a consequence of what I'm doing? Because I'm very aware that I'm one of the most experienced in my school, more experienced than the leadership team that are there. I've actively chosen not to be a leader in that school, but I have to respect that sometimes the leadership are going to say things and do things that I may not agree with. But how I behave is going to have massive ramifications. And the book helped me understand that. It helped me to realize that actually, for me, I need to be better at what I do, but not as a teacher, but as a human being.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And the
Yeah.
book kind of helped me to, when I was reading, it helped me to understand that. But there is, like I say, 30 to 40 different authors who all have a different perspective on what well-being was, but it's interwoven really well. It's not one of those where piece, 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 piece,
Yeah.
piece. It kind of all ties in. I did with my section was with a guy called Chris Reddy, who is phenomenal. He goes into schools, he delivers well-being sessions with children and with staff, and it's things he does is amazing.
Is he a head teacher?
No,
He's not.
he's ex-teacher. No, ex-teacher. But yeah, Chris Reddy, he's one of these guys that I met through circumstance, and we developed a really good bond. And we check in every so often. And his girls are a little bit older than mine, but I was inspired by him
Mm.
and the thought process. And my story kind of tied into what he does now and how he then developed his own well-being to support others as well, which it was one of those fantastic moments. But the book itself just gave everyone the opportunity to have a springboard, and then from that, we then, myself and Kimberly developed over a year and a half or so an online forum every month where anyone from the education sector, not teachers. I mean, we had heads, we had executive heads that would come online. Would have not a meeting, we'd have a conversation about how we are. It's a bit like Head in the Game, but online for teachers. And it was great to be able to listen to people. And they maybe didn't want me to speak and they didn't want me to answer a question. They just wanted to talk.
Mm.
And it was great. It was one of those wonderful opportunities where people could offload, and it's coaching. It's a coaching conversation. I mean, you know these, you deliver them so well in what you do now with your tutoring businesses, that
Mm.
it's the coaching conversations around how are we going to make things better for you. And that's what we were delivering for a year and a half after the book, while the book was coming out and afterwards, that we kind of gave people more of a platform to be able to speak. And it was men at that time. Eventually we'd like to have opened up for women, but our directions kind of took a different way at that time. But yeah, the book was a great opportunity to delve deeper into everyone's well-being in a school, not just teachers.
Yeah. If you let's take a holistic view, right, and we'll focus on one school, not
Yep.
the whole. I don't know, primary schools. I think there's like almost 25,000 in the UK is a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So if you could have free reign to do what you wanted, what would it look
Mm.
like?
Ooh, wow. Depending on the children you've got. See, this is
Yeah,
difficult. So if I had a regular school,
which would be what?
normal
Like, so
numbers.
that would be like 12.5% SEND almost. Maybe probably gone
Yeah,
up a little bit, but 14%
about
SEND.
40%, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're looking at children from disadvantaged backgrounds. You're looking at roughly about 20%,
Yeah.
give or take. Um, you know, if you could wave a magic wand on that school, I think the first thing you need to do is just ensure that your staff, their well-being, their mental fitness, and I love that phrase from Head in the Game. The mental fitness is where it needs to be, because without happy staff, and again, you look at corporate world, and again, this is a corporate analogy.
Yeah.
Miserable staff equals low
Yeah.
output, right?
Yeah.
Happy staff equals maximum output.
Can I
And
ask you something, right? I'm going to jump in
yeah,
here. And I have an issue, and I've always had an issue with the national curriculum, which is that I don't think there's a lot of joy in it. And I think the joy doesn't come from the curriculum. It comes from, look, when you go into primary school, I'm going to like backtrack it up. You go into primary school, it's generally a happy place, generally.
Yeah.
Like whether people are wearing masks, right? Generally,
Yeah.
we go in as adults, as the experts, like from, like you say, front of house, to the office managers, to the finance people, the whoever you could talk about, all the support staff. People go in and they make it a happy place. But when you look at the curriculum and what we teach, there's just nothing there like that seems to set up happiness anywhere. Like happiness doesn't enter the conversation. It's like we don't even consider mental fitness. I mean, even just from what we've got to go in and deliver perspective, let alone whether we come into it as employees, which essentially.
I mean,
yeah, go on.
I've seen a couple of changes with curriculum, and the one thing that I'm always frustrated by as a class practitioner is the fact that we have to deliver something that we haven't asked the children if they want to learn. We're not necessarily we're not necessarily looking at jobs for the future. We're not shifting with the change of times and the patterns of behaviors that children are showing. We're not looking at the development of the world and how what we teach in primary is going to then feed into secondary, is then going to feed into university degrees, is then going to feed into the next crop of tax-paying individuals. We're not looking at where the job sector is going.
There's a disconnect.
There's no link. So I've spoken to secondary colleagues, so primary colleagues, secondary colleagues, further education colleagues, and it's like, where's the interwoven like dialogue? There's no A to Z. It's we're going to go A, X, B, Y, C. It's like looking at a star formation and going, that looks really pretty, but we're not really getting much out of it.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
And it's one of those where you go, the primary sector is trying to cram so much, and for me, it's these knowledge and skills conversations that you have with the lovely Ofsted, and schools are held accountable for the children not knowing knowledge, and it's like, but they're 7 and you're asking them to cram all this information in, which we don't want a glass ceiling our children, right? Get that, don't want a glass ceiling them, but where's the autonomy in their learning? My daughter's school, which it's been a bit of a bone of contention locally, where they do continual provision all the way through till year 3. And, some people are like, whoa. I mean, me being one of them, I was like, I don't get it. I don't understand. But then when my daughter comes home and she's gone, I've done this today. I said, how did you do that? Well, I saw this lying on the floor and I know that our topic is this. And I did this, this, and this to make it come to life. So, right. I said, then what to do with that? Then I thought about, what can I do with my writing? So I wrote a non-chronological report on a bee, because I'd made this bee out of metal that I found on the playground. Not sharp metal, metal that I found on the playground. And there was nuts and bolts just lying there. I mean, I know I'm not a fool. I know why they're lying there. The teachers are putting them there. But actually, it's the ability that school's giving my child to open up and explore their learning in a way that other settings don't do. I think the agency, the autonomy, the freedom for children to be able to explore their learning in a different way. I mean, I'm a year 6 teacher by trade. I've never, apart from in my pre-GTP year when I was a TA in reception, have I ever stepped foot back into an EYFS setting. You get labelled as most schools I've been the only guy, so you get put up in the upper years because you know how to deal with behaviour because you're a man, and I hate that.
You're a role model.
So wrong on that. So wrong, but it always happens. Pigeonholed is the one I'm going to use, but you do it anyway. But we need to shift it back on its head and actually go to an early years setting Allow children an opportunity to be able to develop their own learning and push it forward. Now, the only way we can do that is by scaling back on the curriculum. And by scaling back, not limiting what the children are doing, but giving them more opportunities to do it themselves. Because how are they going to learn? There has to be a difference. And, we're not looking at future jobs and future career pathways. I say we aren't, but many are not. The curriculum doesn't necessarily lend itself to that. I mean, we can make it as fun and as engaging as we want, but you still have to shoehorn it in. I've been into some amazing schools, and it's still the same conversation. Like, how do you do this, guys? I just do. I mean, they're exhausted, but it's like, yeah, we just have to manage to fit it in. You don't want to have to, the mask comes off. We don't want to want to fit it in. What we want to do is actually have a bit of creativity with it. There is, again, massive scope in talking about curriculum creation, and there's many schools that are out there that are completely changing it, and well done to them. I think that's great. I think it's fantastic. If anyone's listening and you are doing that, brilliant. Hit me up. I'd love to know. I'd love to know more.
I read this going back a fair while now, maybe early 30s. I read a book that was written by Tim Ferriss, and in his book he talks about we have conveyor belts, right? So all our curriculum is just based about conveyor belt, right? You're that age, you go to school and you stay with people your own age all the way through, which is just a really organized way of doing it. It's not the right way, it's just a way that we've just decided. And he heard that there was a school or a couple of schools in San Francisco who had gone, we're not going to do it this way. What we're going to do is we're going to have classrooms, but they're mixed. We're going to have age 5 to 16. And we're going to set up in a completely different way. It's non-linear, but obviously the work that a 16-year-old's doing, if we're doing core subjects, is going to be different to what a 5-year-old, but they're all going to be in there sharing a space, learning from one another. And then until they do all their core subjects in the morning, in the afternoon, do project-based, and they do pure open, like, right, we've got to plan this thing. And they'll theme it up. The school put a theme in place, but they all take turns leading projects, even the 5-year-olds. So the 5-year-olds will be, I'd say, because I mean, it's only like a very small chapter in the book. I'd love to have gone and seen it myself, but they talks about how a 5-year-old would be leading 16-year-olds. But I imagine that they're getting quite a lot of support, and it's not just them doing like leading on their own. But to me, it made me think about what I was doing in my classroom, because I was still teaching full time, and going, actually, what is this about? But then, if I've basically got to cram in 11 to 12 months worth of maths in 8 months. I have no choice. So therefore, if a child gets stuck on place value, I'm like, do you know what? Don't worry, you'll cover it next year. At a higher level, you just have to wait. If you wait 12 months, it'll come around again. And I know we do early morning work, and then we try and squeeze in another 5 minutes after lunch, and it's squeeze all the time. But that to me seems like your suggestion there is just going, we need to just have some breathing space somewhere. Let's just, and the results will just sort of speak for themselves, on ourselves especially, but
I think it's going to take brave schools, brave leadership, revolutionaries to actually put this into place. Those that aren't scared. It's almost that. I remember a couple of years back there was that discussion about, do we do SATs? And you had brave schools that said no,
I'm doing it.
They stopped, and it was like, we're not doing it. Did the world stop for them? Nope.
Yeah, we often say this in our school. We often said it. We used to say, how many schools or head teachers would it take to just go, no, we're not, for it all to change? Because it wouldn't be that much. Because once you got like a group of 40 schools, the next 40 would follow, and then the next 100 would follow, and then people would go, oh, they're not doing it. It's power to the people, isn't it? That's a government problem. Look, man, I actually think that we could probably talk till this is now 8:30. We've been chatting for a long time. I really appreciate your time, and I often say this at the end of podcasts, that there needs to be a part 2, because there's always more to discuss. And actually, it'd be interesting to like catch up with you again in perhaps a year's time to see what's going on and where you're at, and I can share my journey with heading the game as well. And I kind of have a similar hope. I'd like to get involved at some level. after the fact, because I think it's the right time to give back in. And I think that's how you can look after yourself more. I found since leaving teaching that I didn't have time when I was a teacher, and I don't often use time as an excuse, but you really don't have time as a teacher to give back. You barely have time to give to yourself. You barely have time to give to your own family. So when you're looking back at the wider things you could do for your community, even just in a small sense, it's really hard to do it. And I feel like I'm in a space where I could, and putting it around football for me is like a real big motivation. But you know, that's a genuine thing on my half, and I'll go through the program, and I'm not with that in mind. I want to experience the program properly, and if it feels right, I will see if it's a right fit, and if there's space, I'd like to get involved in some way. That I honestly think we could chat for ages. Let's do it, and let's record it again in another time. In between, stay in touch, because there's lots here that I think we could go and make shine a light on these things, and hopefully we can find these brave, courageous leaders who are up for experimenting, trialing, and then telling us the results, telling us, no, that didn't work, because no, this could work because we did this, and we can make the 4-day working week happen. But yeah, man, I really appreciate your time, man. It's great to connect.
No, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the platform, buddy. Thank you.
No problem.